Well, how are we doing, folks? How are you all doing on this marvelous Saturday? And when I say marvelous Saturday, I'm taking a chance because as you know, we tape ahead of time. As a matter of fact, today, if I'm not mistaken, is Tuesday. So for all we know, when we come around to Saturday, it might be a bloody thunderstorm out there, for all we know. But in any event, as long as you're with your loved ones and they're healthy and happy, then it's a good Saturday. It's a damn good Saturday. Great weekend. Now, today, I got my friend here, my guest. I'm sure you folks remember him. And this is Tom Syracuse. And he was formerly the head of the Manhattan chapter of the Green Party. But nowadays, he's he's expanded his horizon somewhat, and he's in quite a few different things. And he has some things that I think are very important. You really need to pay special attention to this particular episode of the Concerned Forum, because he's going to be giving us information, extremely important information, about this stuff that's going to be on the ballot for this election, right? And so pay careful attention. Now, I'm just going to take a quick 5 or 10 minutes, because I want to make sure that we're keeping up with what's going on with this whole business about the impeachment. And I know that there's some of you folks out there are so tired of hearing about Donald Trump. Tell you the truth, I'm damn tired. I'm sick of the SOB myself. However, this is our home. This is our country. And we have to keep up with the facts, unpleasant as those facts may be. It would appear that all this nonsense that Trump has been trying to build up, it's a witch hunt. It's the Democrats who are just crying sour grapes. Well, we know now that's not the case. We know now that we have a president, for the first time in our history, we have a president that has been doing extortion. Extortion. He has been forcing a country, a smaller country, fighting for its life, fighting for its survival as a democratic country. We had an agreement with these folks for over $400 million of military hardware so they could defend themselves. Everything's cool. Everything was, the wheels of government were rolling along just fine to make sure that that country got its equipment. And then what happens? Along comes Trump. And what does he do? He sits the president of this country down and he says, yeah, we have all this stuff lined up for you, but I want you to do me a favor. Which of course is no failure. Make a long story short, he tells them, either you dig up dirt on Biden's son, or you are not going to get your military equipment. This puts our country in danger. And see, people need to understand that, because the Russians already have troops in this country. The purpose of the equipment was so that these people could defend themselves. As it stands right now, Russia is basically controlling the Middle East. It's basically controlling Eastern Europe. And we have no idea where it's going to stop. And our president is helping them to do exactly that. That's why the other day, when he had that blow up at that meeting with the congressional leadership, Pelosi told him, Mr. President, the problem here with you is that every road, all of them seem to lead right back to Putin. And that's the truth. That's why I say this is such a unique circumstance. Don't take my word for anything. Do your own research, but you must pay attention. I know it's hard. We work, we have to raise our kids, we have to worry about the rent, we have to make sure that mom is being taken care of by the doctors. The things that most normal people have to deal with in life. But we cannot forget the fact that we are citizens of this democratic republic. And whether it starts to flourish and gets better, or whether it falls, that's on our shoulders. Remember, we're the ones that are supposed to run this show. That's the purpose of having a democratic republic. Now, you have a choice. And see, people need to think about this because there are some folks in this country, they are more interested in their bigoted feelings towards brown people. In other words, they're more concerned about brown toddlers being locked in cages than they are about the Russians having undue influence over our country, especially our foreign policy. Because, once a nation starts to have influence on your foreign policy, it's just a hop and a skip before they are also involved in your domestic policy. You need to start thinking about that. We all do. Now, as I said, what's going on right here in New York is extremely important with this election coming up. And my friend Mr. Syracuse here has information that we all need to know. So lay it on us, oh wise one.
Well, I want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be on your show, and also in the past, because there are few opportunities for alternative point of views to be expressed. Certainly not on our mass media. Why are we having a special election in the first place? This is not a general election coming up. Well, it's because the former public advocate, Letitia James,
Right.
she was selected to be the Attorney General of New York State.
All right.
And so we didn't have a public advocate. So Jumaane Williams, who was in the council, New York City Council, representing, I believe it was the 45th District in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
He was selected to be interim public advocate until this special election. Now, actually, this special election is already going on. One can vote early. That started on October 26th, and this will be the case until November 3rd.
You said November 3rd?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
So I think that's well. Anyway, and then the election, the general election. That is the general election for this special election, just for public advocate, will be November 5th.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, special. Not some special early voting.
The early,
Yeah.
you can vote now.
That's correct.
Well, by the time this program is aired on the show, though, you know.
May I?
Sure. There's the calendar.
Here we go.
There are 3 people running for public advocate. Jumani Williams, he's the favorite to win. Then there's Joseph Borelli. He's on the city council. He's running as a Republican conservative. And then there's David Balkind, who's running on the Libertarian line. I'm going to talk a little bit about Borelli and Balkind before I get to Jumani Williams. But I will need that. Everybody was supposed to have gotten from the Board of Election the general information about the 3 candidates, and there's also going to be 5 ballot questions on the other side of the ballot when you vote. And we'll talk about those ballot questions, particularly the first 2 ballot questions. The first one has to do with ranked choice voting. I'll have to explain that a little later. And the second, the Civilian Police Review Board. I have to explain that. So I will need that to continue my explanation. Now, this Joseph Borelli, he's a councilman, I believe, I'm not absolutely sure, but I think from Staten Island. He's running as a Republican conservative. He was a member of the New York State Assembly. He belongs to the National Caucus of Republican Mayors and City Council Members, Knights of Columbus, and the Holy Child Roman Catholic Church. What are his issues? Very simple. Stop the de Blasio agenda. And it's a slogan.
Yeah, okay.
What he means by that, who knows? But that's it.
Stop de Blasio.
Yeah. I think he actually admitted that he was asked by a reporter, well, why are you running? And, you don't seem to have any kind of a program, and you're not going to, I mean, the chances of your being elected is less than a snowball's chance in hell. But he did point out that running for public advocate or being elected as public advocate is often a stepping stone to a so-called higher office.
Okay.
For example, Mayor de Blasio, he was the public advocate. So I don't know what Borelli's stepping stone is, but he does have a point there. Now,
Excuse me. So Borelli, his main thing, he's running just to stop de Blasio, right?
no, because de Blasio cannot run for mayor again.
Okay.
And the public advocate has no power to stop what the mayor is doing.
Okay. So what the hell does he keep talking about Stop de Blasio?
I don't know. I suppose that appeals to his base of ultra-conservatives who consider de Blasio as a left-wing progressive Democrat. Whether de
Okay.
Blasio really is a progressive Democrat is another question.
Well, yeah.
But anyway, and then we have Devin Balakine, the libertarian.
Oh, boy.
He has no experience in public government. Not that that necessarily means anything in itself.
As we have found out
Yeah, right.
these last 3 years.
So his program is a little more specific than Borelli's.
Okay, what's he want?
He wants to strengthen the social security, the social safety net.
Okay.
I'm not sure what he means by that, but that's one of the problems with all of these candidates. They say things, but there are no specifics. He wants to digitalize information on the city agencies.
I thought we were doing that.
So I'm not quite sure what that means. He wants to facilitate our mass transit coordination.
Okay.
I'm not sure what he means by that.
The robots run the subway.
And he wants to produce websites that will enable New Yorkers to understand how their government works and how it spends money. He's a technologist, and he founded the Sahana Software Foundation.
Uh-huh.
So now we get to Jumaane Williams, who in all probability will be, he's the interim public advocate, and he will become our permanent public advocate.
Hopefully.
So his top three, and this is in the information that was sent to all of you, his top three issues are New York City's affordable housing crisis, increasing government transparency and accountability, and our criminal justice system, and particularly the problem with gun violence. So now let's address the first issue, the affordable housing crisis. We certainly have an affordable housing crisis for low and moderate income people. The state legislature did pass some reforms finally. In the past, the Democrats claimed that they really couldn't reform the rent laws because it would be always blocked by the Republicans who controlled the state Senate. But this time around, the Democrats control both the state assembly and the state Senate and the governorship. So they were under a great deal of pressure to come up with some housing reforms, which I won't go into now because I'm talking now about Jumaane Williams and his stand on housing.
Well, how do you feel about his stand?
Well, it seems that he's playing on both sides here. For example, he has admitted that he has a close relationship with the two landlord organizations in the city.
Got their names?
The real estate, the New York Real Estate Board. It's very close relationship with its former president, and the Rent Stabilization Association. That's a big lobby group. It's nothing to do with rent stabilization per se, but it's a big lobby group of the landlords. So that gives me a certain amount of concern. Now, Giuliani, his comes from a middle-class family. His father was a physician, and his mother was I believe a pharmacist.
Okay.
He was elected to the city council, and he was chair for a while of the housing committee of the city council. However, there are some things that that certain tenant organizations are pushing for, particularly having to do with Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo's approach to housing. I belong to one of these groups called the Tenant Action Network. The first one that both support is really handing over the problem of the severe lack of affordable housing for working class people to big developers. Now you've seen, you can't help but not notice that these high-rise luxury residential buildings are like mushrooming all over the city.
Yes, yes.
And they are being subsidized and encouraged by the mayor and the governor. The mayor has allowed them under this program is called mandatory inclusionary housing and zoning. He has allowed these big developers to set aside the zoning laws and build as high as they really want to. The governor, he has just started under Governor Bloomberg. He has
You mean Mayor Bloomberg?
this tax. He has given a tax abatement, and I said he didn't begin it, but he's continuing it. A tax abatement that amounts to over $1 billion a year to those big developers that are involved.
Oh, I didn't know that much.
Yeah, with this inclusionary housing and zoning. And in return, that these big developers are supposed to include or put aside up to 30% of the units in these luxury buildings, put aside those units as affordable units. Well, now we have to figure out, what does affordable mean? Well, it's based upon the average median income of New York City and Westchester. Well, that includes not only poor people, it includes everybody, including billionaires. And do you know what the average median income is for this geographical area? It's over $100,000 a year.
Yeah, I know.
So that means that these affordable units are open to people making upwards $100,000 a year.
Let me.
What about the people who really are in a terrible situation? Low-income people who can't, who either they don't live in subsidized housing or rent-control housing, and what about those people? The state legislature did not pass any legislation to build more public housing for those people, and they're not eligible for this this inclusionary housing put up by these developers. Those people that are making less than $30,000 a year are not eligible, and they're the ones that really need it. Well, Jumaane Williams, he does not oppose these two programs under de Blasio and Governor Cuomo.
Okay.
So that's another big concern I have about Jumaane. I want to read you a quote that in a question put before him by a reporter about this problem. Quote, "We cannot force communities to change overnight, but we slowly have to figure this thing out." Now, Williams is a landlord. He doesn't own a large apartment house, but he does rent a 2 or 3 family house. And like I said, he really, I'm very concerned about his stand on public housing.
Okay. Let me call something. Now, you're familiar. You told me earlier you're familiar with CASA, right? The housing group that's fighting for low-income tenants. Now, oddly enough, because I'm also a member of CASA, and we're basically, fighting Northern Manhattan, the Bronx, and now, since we got that small victory this summer, we are basically fighting statewide. And we also have some very dire concerns about this business of low-income housing and, who should live there. All right? In parts of Northern Manhattan and in the Bronx, if you're talking about low-income housing, then you're talking about people that are making maybe $25,000 a year. And see, the question has to be, who is looking out for them? And see, this is the greatest concern right now in terms of the material conditions of the city. What are you going to do if you have you have these situations where everybody is not an up and coming, a young up and coming urban professional. Everyone is not making $150,000, $125,000 a year. Our society, unfortunately, It should be like that, but because of certain conditions and certain things that have not been done over the last 40 years, we're not like that, right? So we have to start thinking in terms of not so much as reaching down, but in terms of raising up. And you don't do that by tearing down the small mom and pop businesses. For example, I know over in the Bronx, you have a lot of auto shops. A lot of our Hispanic brothers and African brothers, they have managed to construct businesses, car redoing and things of that nature. And the powers that be want to simply wipe all that out. And they want to wipe out the people that live in those communities. And see, this whole thing, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say, if you don't pay attention to what's going on, you could wake up and find yourself out in the street, because you have to elect people that are going to have your interest at heart. Now, one of the big problems that we have here in New York State is our politics. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Other places is more diversified, all right? You got a little of this, you got a little of that, right? Here in New York, what's it about? It's about entertainment and it's about real estate. And looking by the monster that we have in the White House in Washington, D.C., well, he comes right out of New York real estate, okay? So that gives you an idea of the type of mentality that, the real estate industry has. Now, it can be done. You can house people, all right? And we have to stop this nonsense about, the homeless. Oh, well, they are drug addicts or ex-felons, or they are, a lot of times they are abused women with children. Well, guess what? They are that, and they are much, much more. Number one, homelessness is something that it has attacked this entire country. Of all types of people, all ethnic backgrounds. See, that's the first thing. We have to get this crazy thinking that we have in this city and in this country. Oh, well, the reason this person A is homeless because person A is drug addicted. No, person B is homeless because person B is mental. No. But see, when you have people who have lost their homes and our social safety net is not there for them, yeah, that will tend to play upon somebody's mind. You're damn right it will. You see, we create these problems as a society. And then we attack the people, okay, who suffer from the problems that we created. Oh, and don't forget, damn near, I would say, here in New York City, about a third of these folks, between a third and a fourth of these homeless people are veterans. Okay? Believe me, I know of what I speak. Okay? I used to be one, both my son and myself, while my wife was dying in the intensive care ward. So, this idea that here in New York we're this great liberal bastion, that might be the intent. That might be the idea. But we are far from it.
Well, when I first moved, actually, my parents and their kids, myself included, we were born here in Manhattan. We moved up to Connecticut when I was 2 years old, but then I came back to New York in 1966. And at that time, the city was having, in the late 60s, early 70s, the city was having serious financial problems.
Yes, yeah, we
There was a lot
remember.
of crime.
Yeah.
The tax base was shrinking, and a lot of middle and upper middle class people were moving out of the city. And actually, it was pretty easy to get an apartment for a working class person to get an apartment.
That's correct.
Most of the older buildings were under rent control. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I'm very grateful that I got a rent controlled apartment. I'm still in it. I wouldn't dare leave it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a retired teacher. I have a pretty decent pension and Social Security. If I didn't have this rent-controlled apartment, I wouldn't be able to afford to live in most of Manhattan, or even in certain boroughs. Now,
Hold on a second.
This is all called gentrification.
Right.
And, what is gentrification? Well, wealthy people now, and this is not only in New York, it's in many of the cities like Boston, San Francisco.
It's all
Atlanta.
across the country
it's also
now.
in Europe. Wealthy people no longer want to live out in the suburbs. They want to come back to the city where they can go to concerts and Lincoln Center and places like that. And so naturally, the landlords want to cash in on this. You're having a situation where our local and state governments and the federal government, they're supporting this gentrification. And why are they supporting gentrification? Well, a lot of them are in the pockets of the real estate industry, which is probably the most powerful industry here in New York. So that's and you mentioned mom and pop stores. So when those leases are up for these small mom and pop stores, the landlords know that they can get, now with the wealthier people coming into the neighborhood and willing to go to Starbucks and spend $4 or $5 for a cup of coffee, they would rather do that. They can do that. The landlord will raise the expiring lease of, say, a mom and pop diner, and he can't afford it. So you know how many small mom and pop businesses are biting the dust?
Quite a few.
Every month.
Quite a few.
In this city, 1,000, and they hire people from communities of color, and what you're having is this huge displacement of working class people, particularly communities of color, and you can see this in Harlem. Just
Okay,
walk to Harlem.
Tom, I'm going to need to cut you off for a quick second here. I got a point here that has to be made, and then we're going to move on to something else more pertaining to the election.
The ballot.
The ballot,
question,
yeah.
that's right.
Now, one of the problems that we have, and this is a nationwide problem, and people, now I've seen folks bring up this topic on MSNBC a lot, and I'm putting in a plug for them because a lot of issues that need to be spoken about, they are spoken about on MSNBC. So in my opinion, all right, my show, my opinion, if you're watching Fox, if you're watching something, a horror show, a movie or something like that, that's fine. But if you're watching Fox Network for news, you're wasting your time because you're not going to learn a damn thing. All you're going to learn is right-wing propaganda. But one of the biggest problems that we have, and this is what makes Trump happy, white working class folks. Listen, I've spent 26 years in the military, all right? White working class, right on. Asian working class, Native American, Hispanic, all right? We are all brothers and sisters. We are all in the same boat. But there are certain powers that be that are constantly trying to turn the white working class against people of color. And I request, okay, I plead with white working class folks, especially white working class men, don't fall for that hype. Because what happens is the same way that they run people of color down, especially with this homeless situation. Look at New York. Look at any other city in this country, and you know what has been out there more and more since 1982? Homeless white people. Go down south. Go out west. Go in the southwest, and you will see it. Working class white folks who are out in the street. But see, certain powers that be, they don't want to project that because they want to keep this image in mind of a black or a Hispanic, okay, as being the only people who are homeless and need food stamps. And that's not true. All working class Americans are suffering from these vultures, and we have to keep this in mind. And that's why the Democratic Party, right now, we are going through some changes because our rank and file is saying, this nonsense about talking about poverty in some kind of certain genteel way and just relegating it to people of color, that's crap. Because I'm a working class white guy in Pennsylvania and I'm catching hell. And they have a right to be angry. Only just don't be angry at your brother who happens to be a person of color, because he's going through the same hell that you're going through. He didn't cause it, and neither did you. Now, this business about the welfare queen, I should hope by now that intelligent working class people realize that that's a bunch of crap. I mean, you always got people that try to game the system, just like in Wall Street, all right? That's nothing new. But this business about condemning all people below a certain tax level, all right, to poverty, to homelessness, okay? Not only is it inhumane, it's un-American. It's not what this country's supposed to be about. You know how you take care of the homeless? You help them get into homes. That's how you take care of them. Now, talking about the ballot that's coming up, what's the first ballot issue?
Well, the first ballot issue is called ranked choice voting. Now, the Charter Commission, these have to do with changing the city charter. And so the Charter Commission did hold public hearings, and the overwhelming majority of the people that attended these hearings called for this ranked choice voting to apply to all elections in New York State. Or at least in New York City. Now, what is ranked choice voting? Well, right now, a candidate who gets the most amount of votes, no matter how small that amount may be, he'll get elected. So if there are many candidates running for office, And this candidate, and this has happened many, many times. The one who gets the plurality, maybe he got 15% of the vote. That means the majority of the people that voted for other people, their a candidate will be getting in that they didn't vote for. So to solve that question, voters would have a ranked choice ballot in which they could put up to 5 candidates on that ballot, rank them 1 to 5, to determine the winners. If one candidate receives, if one candidate receives 50% or more of the votes, then that candidate will win. You wouldn't have to have a runoff election.
Right.
But if no candidate receives that, then the candidate with the fewest number of first choice votes, that will be eliminated, and the voters who rank their candidate first will have those votes transferred to their second choice, and then the votes will be counted again until you get to a point where some candidate will get over 50%. Well, the Charter Commission reworded the whole thing, and this is only going to apply not to all the elections here in New York City or New York State. It's only going to apply for special elections like the one we're having in a few days, or in primary elections for mayor, public advocate, and controller. That's not what the majority of people at the hearing wanted. So this is a very, very limited application of ranked choice voting.
Okay.
Now the next ballot question, very important, has to do with the Civilian Complaint Police Review Board.
Ah, the biggie. Yeah.
Now here again, at the public hearings, most of the people that testified wanted a police board that was a review board that was much stronger than the one we have now, and that this board would be elected by the public, and that once elected, the board would be able to make recommendations as to punishing the police officer that committed undue force or brutality or whatever, and also that the board would be able to determine what the punishment would be. Here again, the ballot that we're going to see really doesn't change the situation at all. The people that will be sitting on the board will no longer be 13 members from mostly from the city council. It will now is 15 members, mostly from the city council. 5 will be directed by the city council. 8 will be nominated by the president, the mayor, and 1 by the public advocate. And but the board will, of course, as before, will be able to investigate and make recommendations. But the person that will determine what the punishment will be, as is now, will be, guess who?
The mayor, right?
A mayor appointee who is the commissioner of the police department.
No, wait, hold on a second.
He will determine what the punishment will be if the review board recommends that the person involved, the accused, is guilty.
Now, hold on
And
a
that's the way
second.
it is now, and that's the way so what?
Yeah, well,
so
see,
what
people
happened
want to know,
is that
though.
no significant changes will take place.
No, hold on a second,
with
Tom.
these
You're
ballot
going.
questions.
You skipped on that one a little bit too quickly. The mayor appoints this guy, right? Or gal.
He does now too. Yeah.
Okay.
He appoints the commissioner, the police commissioner.
It needs to be an elected official.
Right.
That person needs to be an elected official.
And most people believe that the person that determines the punishment should be an elected police review board, elected by the people, not the police commissioner who is appointed by the mayor.
So, what about the policeman's due process, though?
Well, that would all have the policeman naturally has the right to be represented, and he would present his case and
Presented to who, though?
to the review board.
And who do you want to see on the board?
That would have to be decided by people that would be running for the review board if they were elected. But right now they are appointed by the mayor
Okay.
and the city council.
See, this is what I don't understand, and I'm quite sure our friends and family out there might not understand it either. Now, these people that you're talking about, right? Are they going to, and you want them to be elected, right? Okay. How many people are we talking about?
Well, that would have to be worked out. But in any case,
And shouldn't one of those
the
people?
way the ballot question is worded,
Uh-huh.
it's more or less it would be 15 people. It will be increased from 13 to 15 people, appointed by the mayor, one by the public advocate, and the rest by the city council.
Shouldn't one or two of those people be police officers or former law, at the least, former law enforcement?
Well, they already have their police commissioner who will determine their punishment.
No, I'm not talking
under
about
this
him.
system.
I'm talking about the.
And under the new ballot, the way the ballot is worded.
Yeah, but you're talking about the people who are going to sit in judgment.
Well, depending on the kind of crime that's committed, this would have to go. The district attorney would have to decide to bring it to a grand jury.
So you're talking about something. You're talking about something entirely separate, though.
Right.
Because if you're talking about a grand jury,
Right.
then you're talking about the normal legal procedure. What I want to see is a board, the same type of board that my father used to fight for. Okay? See, this has been going on for forever.
Oh yeah.
You know, when I was, back in the 60s, when I was like 4 and 5, my old man was fighting for a civilian review board, or at least an outside agency,
Right.
because no agency can judge itself. We need to have an IG. Okay, that's the first thing. The civilians, yeah, there definitely has to be civilians on that board. And yes, let's have some law enforcement there, because you do have to have people there who understand what it's like to be in that cop situation. See?
As long as they're not in the majority on the board.
No, they should not be in the majority. No, no.
But right now, it's the police commissioner, who is appointed by the mayor, who makes the final decision.
Yeah, I think that is wrong.
And the board
Yeah.
itself is not elected by the public.
Yeah, and the board should belong to the public. Okay. The only
You
question
can
is,
reserve some seats, on the
yeah,
board.
you should reserve some seats for police.
For people in the police department.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Because see, this is what I don't want. I don't want Lynch. You know who Lynch is, right? Head of the police union.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want him and his supporters to say, "Oh, well, this is something that was done to appease the liberal slash minority, even though we're not the minority anymore,
Well,
to appease us."
He should be in favor of the way the ballot on the civilian police review board is worded, because it really doesn't change anything. It's up to the police commissioner.
Okay.
And it's very unlikely that the police commissioner is going to go against the police union.
No, that's not. No, no, that's not the case. Now, this guy that strangled that, I can't think of the brother's name. In Staten Island.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking. Gardner, I think.
Errol. Yeah.
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 Okay. The commissioner, he gave what was the name of the cop? Starts with a P, if I'm not mistaken. The commissioner gave that guy the axe, even though he knew that he would be looked upon disfavorably
Yeah.
by fellow cops.
Right.
But he did the right thing.
Well, there was a huge, if you remember,
Oh, yeah.
a huge amount
Oh, yeah.
of public pressure. So this guy, I think his name was Pantaleo.
Yeah,
He got fired.
Yeah. Well, you had a lot of cops that didn't want to see him
What would have
fired.
happened, of course, only speculation.
Uh-huh.
What would happen if there wasn't this huge, pressure put by the public, particularly the black community? Even Mayor de Blasio himself came out making a statement that this Pantaleo used unnecessary force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know what?
Now the other ballot question.
Okay, yeah, good.
I really don't have time to go into that, but it has to do with conflicts of interest, post-employment of elected officials, and minority women-owned enterprises. I looked them over, but I don't think they really solve the basic problems either.
Well, the big ones are the ones you
But the
just
two
spoke about.
big ones were the
Yeah,
ranked choice voting and the police review board.
yeah. Well, see, I want these things, especially this business about the police board. I want that done with. I want that taken care of, and finished it, and to have it finished with. The other thing is this business about this whole real estate question, because we're not going to here in New York. Now, I'm not going to try and speak. I'm not going to try and speak for L.A. or Frisco, or even Charleston, South Carolina. I'm not going to try and speak for them. However, I will say this, here in New York, we are not going to get this housing solution. We're not going to have a housing solution here in New York until we get this damn real estate business straightened out. And you can't do that because in New York, let's face it, most of these people in politics, they need the money from the real estate industry to run. So what you need to do something about the way that we fund elections. That's one thing. And we also need to figure out how are we going to stand up once and for all
How do you get
to
money
the real estate.
How do you get big money out of politics?
You vote it out.
That's a huge question.
Well, what you have to do, you have to vote it
In
out.
fact, I think the Supreme Court made a decision that you really that you're limiting the freedom of choice by not having big money in politics.
Well, first thing you're going to have to do, we got to get Trump out of there. See, once you get Trump out of there, then we can sit down at a table and we can work that out. But see, that's what you're going to have to do. Look, nobody said, and this is the problem that I have with my fellow progressives and liberals, okay, and with my own community of color. Nobody said that this was going to be easy, all right? This is real life here. That's why now you have people, they want to shoot up whole towns and everything like that. Because with politics in the 21st century, in 21st century America, you're dealing with issues of life and death and money, health care, right? Immigration, right? You're talking about land use. Who's it being used for? And these are heavy-ass issues. And people are very serious about this.
I mean, right now we have many hundreds of thousands of low-income people live in public housing.
Okay.
And so how does the city deal with public housing? It has failed to maintain the public housing. There's huge problems with the heat, the mold, things breaking down.
Uh-huh.
And Mayor de Blasio actually is trying to sell off certain sections of public housing to big developers.
Okay, let me ask you something. We got about 3 minutes here.
Right.
You tell me, what is your solution?
My solution is don't vote for politicians. First of all, you have to find out if these politicians and the programs that they actually institute, like the mayor and the governor, don't vote for these people who are in the pockets of the real estate industry or Wall Street, because they're not going to help you, the majority of people. They're going to help the 1%. They're not going to help the 99%. So you're going to have to do a little more research on this, which is one of the good things about MNN. You have to listen to a program like this and other programs. Unfortunately, there was a program on the radio called WBAI, and that's been taken over by a rump group out in California under the parent organization called Pacifica.
Yeah.
Not all of Pacifica had done this. So it's not that easy for working class people who have all these other problems and issues, or when they come home to expect them to. So
you know what?
The only thing that's what do you have do you have to get to a situation where now they find themselves out on the street?
Well, I'll put it to you like this, right? And I know, especially for a guy that's really thinking about running for office next year, what I'm getting ready to say now as we close, it might not be the smart thing for me to say politically, but I'm going to say it because I believe truth comes before anything else. Now, I'm born and raised, well, first in the tenements and then in the projects. Right over here, Grand Projects, 55 LaSalle Street, okay? As a matter of fact, that's all I knew of the world. 55 LaSalle Street, the Grand Projects, and Harlem. And that's all I knew until I went into service and I began my travels, okay? But let me tell you something. I don't consider myself smarter than anybody else. As a matter of fact, I know I ain't that bright. But if I can take the time to know what the hell is going on in my city, in my country, and on the planet that I live on, I think that everybody else can do the same damn thing. Now, either you give a damn about what's happening around you or you don't. And I mean, I've had this argument with my son. I've had it with my neighbors. I used to have it with my parents when they were still alive. But damn it, if other folks can do it, I know damn well I can do it. I'm not trying. Right. I'm not excusing. No, the system. The system sucks.
People have to. They have to do a little more work.
Yeah, they got to fight.
Finding out what the situation is. Now, this group that I belong to, the Tenant Action Network, we had a conference about the housing project problem at St. Mary's Church on 126th Street.
I know it well.
Near Broadway.
Yeah.
That's right near the Grant houses.
I know it well.
So I went up there with a friend. You know who she is. Mm-hmm. And we gave out a newsletter that we published. Mm-hmm. We gave out hundreds and hundreds of newsletters. Uh-huh. Not only there, but other people gave out newsletters, but mostly in Harlem. Mm-hmm. Because I noticed that if I try to give out something where I live on the west side, I live on West 74th Street, people don't even want to acknowledge that I'm giving something out.
Well, we'll save that for another show.
Right. Mm-hmm. So anyway, how many people from the Grant houses who know that the public housing is under threat mm-hmm. and that they're not being maintained, how many people showed up to that housing conference from the Grant houses?
You tell me.
None. Because they have this mistaken idea. I'm in public housing and I'm secure and I have too many other things to worry about, and I just don't have the time. But they're wrong. Nobody is secure in this kind of a society in which we live.
That's
Nobody.
True.
Whether you're dealing with people that are concerned with the climate crisis. Mm-hmm. I mean, California is on fire.
Yeah.
And these people, we're talking about wealthy communities where the fire is entering and burning their homes up.
Well,
nobody is secure.
We'll save that for another show.
Yeah.
Folks, I want to thank you so much for having us in your homes. I hope you continue enjoying your Saturday. And if you're not, then you need to see what you can do to try and make it better. I'll be back next Saturday, same time, same place, the Concerned Forum. Bob Gums here. We love you. And, oh, by the way, before I forget, don't forget, you can also check us out on YouTube. Spread the word, because the fight to begin to try and change this ridiculous society that we live in begins here with your help. See you next week.
Now, did this whole thing get on tape?
Yeah. That's right. It sure does. Now, we might not be as flashy as MSNBC, But give us some time.